welcome to the Blindfold Chess Podcast.
Welcome to the last episode of the year. We are going to be doing something a little different today. We are going to take a look at a couple of chess variants, primarily focusing on Chess960, Freestyle Chess, or Fischer Random, depending on which era of chess you have played in. Have you ever wondered why we have a traditional chess board laid out the way that we do? Funnily enough, it has been primarily the same as long as the game has existed. Chess has a predecessor in a game called Chaturanga, an old Indian game that has a history spanning over 1,500 years. Chaturanga is played on an 8x8 uncheckerboarded board. You had a foot soldier, which is similar to a pawn, including a possible promotion mechanic. There was also an elephant, which could move 2 squares diagonally, which was the predecessor to our bishop. There was a horse that was changed to our knight, a chariot that was changed to our rook. There was a minister that could move 1 square diagonally in any direction. This was later completely reworked and inspired by the Queen Elizabeth I of Spain in the 15th century to become our modern queen. Lastly, we had a king, which is our king. If you look at the two-person setup of the game, the chariots, or the rooks, started at A1, A8, H1, and H8. The horses, our knights, started at B1, G1, B8, and G8. The elephants, or our bishops, started at C1, F1, C8, and F8, and the minister and king started at D1, E1, D8, and E8. So the starting positions of the squares haven't changed in over a millennia and a half. There are some records that go even further back, as the chariots were obsolete from warfare centuries before our current record, with some historians believing that they found archaeological remains from 2000 to 3000 BC that resembled chess. All of this to say, chess in its current board setup has been around for a very, very long time. Throughout history, there have been a ton of local variants to the game, or there have been some that have been inspired by people that have tried to alter the way that the game is played in trying to reach a new audience or to spruce up how the game is currently played. There are some variations that are named after some people that have played the games, like we have Capablanca chess, which is played on a 10x8 board featuring an archbishop that moved like a knight and a bishop, as well as a chancellor, which is a piece that moved like a rook and a knight. There's also Sarawan chess, which came from Yasser Sarawan, which plays the same as Capablanca chess, using those 2 new pieces that move like a knight and bishop. He called it a hawk, as well as a rook and a knight, which he called an elephant. The key difference here is that Sarawan chess is played on an 8x8 board, and the pieces are only put on the board when there is an opening in your player's camp to do so. So if you move a knight from B1 to C3, then you can put a hawk on B1. There are also some variants that have references to other games, so like we have Crazy House and Bug House, both borrow from the idea of the Japanese chess called shogi. In Crazy House, if you take an opponent's piece, you can put that piece in your own color anywhere on the board that is on an open square. So if you capture your opponent's queen, you now have a queen that you can drop on the board. Bug House is a variation of that, but it is a team game. You and your partner are playing opposite colors against a team of 2. Whenever you capture a piece on your board, you pass that piece to your partner and they can place it on their board. So if you are playing white and you were to capture your opponent's black knight, you give that to your partner as they are playing black, and they can put it on their board on any square in the position. So you have to keep an eye on both boards and see how both boards are doing. There are also some variations that introduce a bit of chance into this strategically 100% skill game by removing either player choice or by forcing the player to have incomplete information about the board. So you have either Fog of War or Kriegspell, where each player takes their turn, but they cannot see where their opponent's pieces are until your pieces can see them. So an example of this, if you have a pawn that is on e4, you cannot see what is on the square of e5, but you can see what is on the squares of d5 and f5. So this gets tricky when you have some pieces that are on long diagonals, and suddenly a piece comes into view, but you have to think, is that piece free, or are there other pieces that are lurking in the shadows ready to recapture it? You also have dice chess, where the player rolls a die, and that die determines which piece the player can move, so long as it is a legal move. This has some similarities with the variation called Hand and Brain, which is a two-person team where one player is moving the pieces, the hand, and the other tells the player which piece the player can move, the brain. The hand cannot talk to the brain, and the brain cannot specify the square that they want the piece to move to. So you have to rely on your connection as two people to figure out what you are talking about. An example of this is if you are at the starting position and the brain says pawn, that means the hand has to determine which of the 16 legal pawn moves the brain is trying to convey. There are also versions that are still chess, but have unique quirks or gimmicks attached to them. So a popular one recently is called duck chess. After the player makes a move, they can move a rubber duck onto one of the squares. This acts as an immovable piece to hinder what your opponent is trying to accomplish, or to trap some of your opponent's pieces in what are called quackdicks. Loser's chess. This involves trying to give away all of your pieces as fast as possible. The rules vary, but generally, if you have the ability to capture a piece, you have to capture it. The game does not end if you lose your king, but instead ends when you lose all of your pieces. 3 check. Instead of having the game end with checkmate, the game ends when you have checked your opponent's king 3 different times. This leads to some reckless sacrifices or moves that traditionally aren't good, but get you a check, which is 33% closer to your victory. King of the Hill. This variation involves whichever person can get their king to the middle of the board, being d4, e4, d5, or e5, first is declared the victor. So you have to balance king safety with complete reckless abandon. There is also Horde chess. In this variation, black starts with their standard pieces, and white starts with 36 pawns. Black is trying to capture every white pawn, and white is trying to checkmate the black king. Atomic chess. In this variation, whenever a piece is captured, all of the pieces in the adjacent 8 squares are blown up and removed from the board, except for pawns. The first person to explode their opponent's king wins. So, in an example, if white is in their starting position and black is able to play a move like queen from f6 captures on f2, that is an instant win for black, since the white knight on g1, the white bishop on f1, the white king on e1, and the black queen on f2 explode off the board. There are hundreds and hundreds more. People have enjoyed this game for so long that there are constant iterations and variations for people to enjoy. For the one we want to focus on today, it has its roots back into the 18th century, with the first recorded game taking place in 1842 when it was called shuffle chess. In this variant, you take the pieces behind each player's pawns and shuffle them around. Changing these pieces not only removes most of the opening theory, but it also creates a new and interesting play starting from move 1. While this variation has been around for a quarter of a millennia, it didn't really gain mainstream attraction until Bobby Fischer started to advocate for it strongly after his informal 1992 rematch against Boris Spassky. Fischer made the comments about traditional chess, calling it a, quote, lousy game in a 1992 broadcast where people had to use theory until move 50 and the game emphasized memorization, not genius. He cited the rise of computers had ruined the game. Quote, I want to keep the old chess game, but just making a change so the starting positions are mixed, so it's not degenerated down to memorization and prearrangement like it is today. End quote. Fischer iterated on shuffle chess by revealing the variation in 1996 with the following rules and calling it Fischer Random. Number 1, the white and black pieces must mirror each other. Number 2, the bishops have to be on opposite colors. Number 3, the king has to be between the two rooks. The castling rules remain the same. It must be the first move for both the king and the rook. You cannot castle into check or through check. All squares between the king and rook's initial and final squares are vacant. The first tournament took place in 1996 in a small Serbian town near Hungary. Grandmaster Peter Svidler won the first ever Fischer Random tournament. Around the turn of the millennia, a German player and tournament organizer, Hans Walter Schmidt, began to rebrand Fischer Random as Chess960 in an attempt to make it more marketable. Why is it called Chess960? If you take all of those rules into consideration, there are a total of 960 possible combinations that the pieces can start out with. Slowly, the format began to gain traction, pulling in higher-level players. In 2001, the first unofficial World Championship took place, with Peter Svidler defeating Michael Adams in the finals. This event continued for 8 years, with Peter Svidler winning 4 times, Levon Aronian winning twice, and Hikaru Nakamura winning twice before funding for the tournament was pulled. There was a resurgence in 2018 with another unofficial World Championship, with Magnus Carlsen winning. The next year, in 2019, it was the first official FIDE World Fischer Random Championship, with Wesley So defeating Jan Nepomniachtchi 13-5 in the semifinals and defeating Magnus Carlsen 13.5 to 2.5 in the finals to become the first official Fischer Random World Champion. The second Fischer Random World Championship came 3 years later, with Hikaru Nakamura defeating Jan Nepomniachtchi in an Armageddon game to claim the title. There was a third championship scheduled in 2024, but that was cancelled. In 2024 and 2025, a new organization called Freestyle Chess announced that they were looking to hold a world championship, but FIDE took exception to that, so the next 960 World Championship has yet to be scheduled. And that is where we are today. Shuffle chess has been around for about 250 years, repopularized by one of the most famous chess players to have ever lived, sparked on by a rebranding effort, several unofficial and official world championships, and gaining an ever-growing following. For our game this week, we are going back to a game between two former Chess960 World Champions in 2019, Wesley So versus Peter Svidler. Now, since this is a 960 game, the back row of pieces on each side are not in their traditional spots. I will read off the location of each piece now. According to chess960.net, we are looking at starting position 900. White has a rook on A1, a light squared bishop on B1, a dark squared bishop on C1, the white king is on D1, the white queen is on E1, the second white rook is on F1, and the two knights are on G1 and H1. So black has the same setup with a rook on A8, a bishop on B8 and C8, a king on D8, queen on E8, their second rook on F8, and knights on G8 h8. So for both sides, it goes rook, bishop, bishop, king, queen, rook, knight, knight. So one last time, it is rook, bishop, bishop, king, queen, rook, knight, knight. Let's see how we do. Now, if we're ready, let's begin.
1. Pawn to d4. Pawn to d5. 2. Pawn to c4. Pawn d captures c4. 3. Knight f3.
There is not a ton of opening theory on specific positions in 960, so right now it looks like a standard Queen's Gambit accepted setup, but that will change momentarily.
Knight g6. 4. Queen c3. Pawn to c6. 5. Castle kingside.
This is a quirk of 960. The white king is now on g1, and the rook did not move and is currently sitting on f1. The pieces look the same as if they did traditionally castle, but white still has a knight on h1.
Knight f6. 6. Queen captures c4. Bishop g4. 7. Knight g5.
What white piece is protecting the knight that is on g5? That would be the bishop that is on c1.
Knight f4. 8. Knight g3. Pawn to h6. 9. Knight 5 to e4.
What white pieces are defending the knight that is on e4? That would be the knight on g3 and the bishop that is on b1.
Knight captures e4. 10. Bishop captures e4. Bishop e6. 11. Queen c2. Queen d7. 12. Bishop captures f4.
Let's do a quick check-in. Where is the white king and queen? And where is the black king and queen? The white queen is on c2, the white king is on g1, the black queen is on d7, and the black king is on its starting square of d8.
Bishop captures f4. 13. Knight h5. Pawn to g5. 14. Rook a to d1. Queen c7. 15. Knight captures f4. Pawn g captures f4. 16. Pawn to d5. Pawn c captures d5. 17. Queen b3. Castle kingside.
The black king went from being in a pin on the d-file to castling. So now the black king is on g8, while the black rook did not move and is currently sitting on f8. Black had the option of castling on the queen side as well. If he would have done that, the king would have moved over one square from d8 to c8, and the black rook on a8 would have moved to d8. This would have been a bad move, as white could play rook to c1 and pin the queen to the king. But it is around this point that the trickiness of 960 has more or less dissipated, and we have drifted back into a normal game of chess.
(18) Bishop captures d5. Bishop captures d5. 19. Rook captures d5. Rook a to d8. 20. Rook f5. Pawn to e6. 21. Rook h5.
Let's take a look at this position. Each side has 2 rooks, a queen, 6 pawns, and a castled king. Who would you rather be in this position and why? The correct answer is white. Black's king is sitting on a semi-open g-file with weak pawns on f4 and h6. Those 3 points are all targets that white can focus on with an active queen and a rook in the position. It is going to be difficult for black to defend all 3 of these. Meanwhile, white's king is protected behind a wall of pawns and no real weaknesses in his structure.
King g7. 22. Queen h3. Rook h8. 23. Queen g4 check. King f8. 24. Queen h4. King g7. 25. Pawn to e3. (26) Pawn e captures f4. Rook captures b2. 27, Queen G3 check. Black resigns.
Why did Black resign in this position? The Black king is in check, and they have 3 legal moves. If they go to f8, White will play queen to a3 check. The Black king will move, and White can play queen captures on b2, picking up the Black rook. If instead Black were to play king to h7, White can play queen to g5 with a pin, and White is going to play rook captures on h6, next move for checkmate. Lastly, if Black were to play king to f6, White can play rook captures on h6 check. If Black plays rook captures on h6, White has queen g5 checkmate. And if the king moves to e7, White can win the Black rook that is on h8. So just some cute tactics to help win the game. As we get deeper and deeper into the theory of chess, Chess960 will continue to be a bastion to avoid mainline theories, allowing people to just play chess. That is until Chess960 theory catches up to where regular chess is, and by that point players will gravitate to a new variant, and in a way continually making the game fresh. So that is all that we have for this week and for this season. Thank you all for your continued support by downloading, listening, and providing feedback. We have had so many new people discover the podcast in 2025, and I will see you in 2026.